In this lesson, you will learn 3 properties of multiplication: the identity, commutative, and the associative properties. First, the identity property of multiplication. I focused in on the ID, the identity, the ID part of that word, because it reminds me of an ID. Let's say you want to take a trip to the Bahamas. Well, that's out of the country. So in order to do that, you have to have a passport. You have to pull out your ID, show them who you are, has a little picture of yourself on there, and once you've proven your identity, they'll give you a passport to be able to go down to the Bahamas. So this property of multiplication is very similar. It says when a number is multiplied by a 1, the product is that number. So let's first look at a picture example. We have Sally the snake here. She's going to be multiplied by 1. Now when Sally is multiplied by 1, she still equals Sally. I like to think of also the 1 as a mirror. Sally looks into the mirror, she sees her identity, and she still is equal to Sally. So that's the identity property. If we turn it into numbers, 8 times 1 is equal to 8. When a number is multiplied by the 1, the product is that number. Same as with 25 times 1 is equal to 25. Anytime a number is anytime a number is multiplied by 1, the product is that number. The second property is the commutative property of multiplication. When you're commuting to and from the Bahamas, or I would say flying, or driving to and from school, you're driving on the same road or commuting. That means to travel back and forth. So this property says that the product of 2 numbers is the same regardless of the order they are multiplied. This is an order property. So this property tells you that regardless of the order, the product will be the same. Product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So if we have 5 times 3, we know that's 15. And we flip-flop it, 3 times 5 is still 15. So regardless of the order, it still equals the same product. 100 times 8 is equal to 8 times 100 is another example of the commutative property. The third property is the associative property of multiplication. If we look at a picture example, we have, notice that these are grouped differently. The numbers we're working with are 2, 4, and 6. 2, 4, and 6. So if you first group 2 times 4 with our circle and stars method, we know that 2 groups of 4 is 8. And then if we multiply 8 times 6, 8 times 6 is 48. Well, if we group them a different way, this time 2 is going to be on its own, and 4 times 6. 4 and 6 are going to be in the parentheses. So 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 groups of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 times 6, we know is 24. And then if we multiply 2 times that 24, we still get 48. So let's see what the property says. When multiplying 3 numbers, the product, or the answer, will be the same regardless of how they are grouped. We grouped them differently, but the product is the same. Turning it into numbers. Remember, anytime you're multiplying, if there are parentheses, you want to multiply the parentheses first. So you multiply 2 times 10 is equal to 20 times 3. 20 times 3 is equal to 60. Same over here, except it's grouped differently this time. First we do the parentheses. 10 times 3 is 30. And then 30 times the 2 is equal to still 60. We get the same product. Same with the next one. 6 times 5 times 2 6 times 5 is 30. Times 2 is 60. That's equal to, if we start out with the parentheses, 5 times 2 is 10, times 6 is still 60, regardless of how they're grouped. I want you to apply your knowledge now and figure out which property is being represented. Number 1, 7 times 1 is 7. Well, I remember this looks like the mirror, so I'm going to turn it into a little fancy mirror. That 7 is going to look into the mirror and she's going to see her ID. 7 times 1 is 7, so that must be the identity property. Number 2, 4 times 8 equals 8 times 4. I can see all they did was change the order. And the order property of multiplication is commutative. You're commuting on the same road to school and back home. Number 3, 12 times 1 is 12. I see that 12 is seeing his identity, so it's the identity property of addition or multiplication. Number 4, 9 times 6 times 3 is equal to 9 times 6 times 3. It's grouped 9 times 6 the first time, times 3, and the second, on the other side of the equal sign, 6 times 3 times 9. Well, I remember when you group them differently, and it doesn't matter which way they're grouped, I remember that was the associative. So regardless of how they're associating with one another, that you will have those will have the same product. So that's the associative property.